MMA Boxing Talk here. This is a UFC 220 recap video. I'm also going to recap Bellator 192, um, Spence versus Peterson, and I'll do a little bit of fight news at the end. I'll try to make this a quick video. Um, Stipe Miocic defends his title for the third consecutive time in a row against a physical, dangerous, strong contender, a guy, a real threat to his title, just like all his other defenses were. I mean, Overeem was a threat, Junior Dos Santos was a threat, but Ngannou brought something different. He really brought, he made a lot of people doubt Stipe Miocic, including myself. I kept going back and forth with my prediction, but I finally, my gut was telling me Ngannou. I thought he'd get it done. I thought that Stipe got hit too much to get past Ngannou, to just survive against Ngannou. I really thought he got hit too much. But you know what? He fought smart. He didn't go in there with an ego. He knew he wasn't going to be able to take shot after shot after shot against Ngannou. That first round was so exciting. My heart was just racing. I was watching that at a bar, and I mean, I was shouting. I was so into it, like a little kid watching that. Um, Amazing fight. I mean, obviously, hats off to Stipe. On paper, he's the greatest UFC heavyweight ever. I still think you can make that argument with Cain Velasquez, but at the end of the day, Cain Velasquez is just not durable enough to hold that record, to hold that three consecutive title defenses. People talk, if he was healthy, sure he could do it, but he's not healthy. He it's been a year and a half since he fought last. He nothing against Cain, but I slightly give Stipe the edge because he's the one that did it. He's the one that actually accomplished it. So hats off to him. What an amazing fighter. Love Stipe. I should have put some money on Stipe, just like I should have put money on Stipe, when he beat Werdum. I had a really strong feeling he was going to beat Werdum. Had a good feeling about Stipe till about, I don't know, 5, 6 days out, and then I just started feeling that Ngannou was going to take it. But was I ever wrong? But hats off to Ngannou. Tough, durable. I mean, showed a great chin. We all know Stipe can crack. I mean, look at all of his knockouts. 5 out of his last 6 fights have came by stoppage. What a role Stipe's been on, though. If you look at the last 6 guys he beat, Mark Hunt, Arlovsky, Werdum, Overeem, Dos Santos, and now Ngannou. I mean, I know some of these guys are a little bit older, a little bit past their prime, but Stipe's 35 himself. He's no spring chicken. Um, but Francis Ngannou, to talk about him, he'll be back. Personally, I think if they rematch in a year from now and you let Ngannou have a fight in between and work on his game, and I think he wins that fight against Stipe Miocic, because in that first round, he blew his gas tank. He blew his load. He went for it. I don't know how many shots he missed completely with all his might. That takes a lot of energy out of you, especially a guy with all that muscle. So I think if he goes out there and fights patient like he did in all of his other fights, people always talk about how patient he is. He didn't show that in this fight. I think that's where he made a big mistake. I think even if he was patient, no guaranteed win last Saturday. But I think in a year from now, if they rematch, I think he wins that fight. And that's taking nothing away from Stipe. But what an amazing performance by him. He did what he had to do. I mean, he is the baddest man on the planet. And now he's confident in saying it. I love that. So anyway, DC, Daniel Cormier beat Oezdemir in the co-main event. DC, I mean, what a legend. All-time great mixed martial artist. Any division, any era. He's one of the greatest of all time. My personal opinion, he's the second best light heavyweight ever. And there's been some savages in that division going back from the early days in the UFC. I mean, Daniel Cormier, the only guy at 205 in the history of 205 division that's better than Cormier is John Jones. That's the only guy. I personally think Cormier, gets the best of all the guys in that division. The Chuck Liddells, the Randy Couture's, the Tito Ortiz's, the Vitor Belfort's, Shogun, uh, Rashad Evans, Lyoto Machida. All these guys who are all legends and former champions. But I think Cormier gets the best of all those guys, So he's an all-time great legend. And Oezdemir was giving him some problems, especially that first round. I mean, Oezdemir, what an awkward striker with this weird angles, but man, it's effective. I mean, it didn't look too good there in the beginning of that fight. Cormier kept ducking to the one side, the same side where Jones hit him with that head kick. I thought Cormier was in a little bit of trouble there for a second. But of course, he comes out in the second round and gets a stoppage. I mean, what more can you say? Love that guy. I love how the fans were, I'm pretty sure they were chanting his name during the fight or after the fight sometime. And I mean, I just love the guy. I get why people don't like him. I understand that, but he is a true blue guy. I mean, the way he wouldn't call himself champ before the fight, he was holding his belt by his waist, holding it low until he won. Now he's the man again, and I'm a huge John Jones fan. I think he's the greatest of all time. I do, despite his PD, anti-doping violations, all that stuff. It's not all conclusive yet, but I think he's the greatest of all time. But right now, I think, in my opinion, John Jones is irrelevant. I know he just beat Daniel Cormier, but he's suspended. He's not a UFC fighter. Daniel Cormier has the belt. I don't know. I don't even want to hear about John Jones until he's reinstated. Let Cormier have his moment. I mean, this is an all-time legend. A lot of, fans want to shit on him because, he just lost to John Jones. Well, John Jones is the fucking Wayne Gretzky of MMA. Nobody's beating that guy. He'll come back in 2 years and he'll still dominate. Maybe not like he used to, but he'll still be one of the best fighters in the world. Not too many guys can do that, But anyway, enough about that. Bellator, of course, Chael Sonnen won a unanimous decision against Rampage Jackson. He's moving on to round 2 of the Grand Prix tournament. He's either going to fight Fedor or Frank Mir. He's going to fight a real heavyweight next. That'll be interesting. I don't see Chael beating either guy, to be quite honest. Maybe Fedor, but I doubt it. I mean, Fedor, I think he'll be too much for Sonnen. I think Frank Mir will be too much as well, and just too big, of course. Frank Mir looked like a monster compared to Fedor in that face-off. But I mean, that's all Fedor's opponents, so nothing new there. Co-main event, which should have been the main event. Rory MacDonald defeats Douglas Lima. I think it was a unanimous decision. I'm not 100% on that, but it was back and forth fight. I think Lima definitely won 2 rounds. He could have won that fight, I don't feel he's the smartest ring general. He doesn't have the best fight IQ. Douglas Lima, tremendous talent, and some small adjustments in that fight. He wins that fight. But hats off to Rory. I mean, the toughness he always shows. I am worried about Rory, though, in a fight where he won, still takes a ton of damage. I think he's got another broken nose. So that's like 3 broken noses for him since the Robbie Lawler fight in the summer of 2015. So I mean, in 2.5 years he's broke his nose 3 times. It's really it's a real shame for that. But when you're in a fight and you break your nose, it affects you. It affects you big time. I'm not sure exactly where when his nose broke, but anyway. So he's the new welterweight champion of Bellator. So that's awesome. The belt's in good hands. And of course, Errol Spence, TKO win over Lamont Peterson. Lamont did not have a good game plan in that fight. He was not fighting characteristically. He was not fighting like he fought in the Danny Garcia fight. It's almost like he wanted Errol Spence's respect. Had the high guard, not really fighting evasively and using his footwork and angles. But hey, nothing against Errol Spence. The guy's the real deal. I love his style. I love how he's good in all ranges as well. He's good in fighter. He's good at range, at distance. He's got power. He's a young guy. He's humble. I mean, he's been calling out Keith Thurman, saying that he's ducking him, and I love Keith Thurman. So either way, but just being honest though, I mean, he's coming off of an injury. He probably should fight Errol Spence next, but it's not a smart thing to do, because if he loses that fight, then there's built-in excuses, and we don't want that. We want both guys fighting at their best. Boxing is different than MMA. There is a thing called tune-up fights. Even though Keith Thurman might end up fighting Sean Porter because he's the mandatory challenger, which is not a tune-up fight. We saw the first fight. That was a very close fight. Lots of people had Sean Porter winning that fight. I scored it for Thurman. He was, scoring the more clear, more clean punches, more noticeable punches. It all depends on what you're looking for. It all depends on what you like. I thought he did enough to win, but if you gave it to Sean Porter, I'd had no problem with that. So they'll probably rematch. But yeah, that fight with Errol Spence and Keith Thurman, that's a fight to make. Hopefully, that fight happens at the end of this year, if not first quarter of 2019. So about a year from now, that fight should happen. Huge fight. Now, a little bit of fight news. Terence Crawford is officially fighting Jeff Horn. I believe it's April 14th for Horn's WBO title. That welterweight division is stacked, of course. You got Keith Thurman with 2 of the belts, the WBC, the WBA. You got Errol Spence Jr. with the IBF, and Jeff Horn has the WBO. Now, most people think Horn is going to lose that fight to Terence Crawford because Crawford's just an exceptional talent, way more skilled, way more cerebral fighter than Jeff Horn. But Jeff Horn brings something to the table. He could give Crawford problems. There's no doubt about that. He's a big, strong guy. But at the end of the day, I feel Crawford's going to win that handedly. So he would be the new WBO champion if he wins. And then you'd have, the 3 champs in that division: Spence, Thurman, and Crawford. I mean, some great matchups if they could all fight each other. But I have a feeling Errol Spence, he's only going to have so many fights at welterweight. I think he'll move up to 154. He's a big, big welterweight, so I could see that happening. Let me know what you guys think about, the welterweight division in boxing. Who you want to fight? Who you want to see? What fights do you like? Also, let me know what you thought of 202 or 220, UFC 220, the Bellator 192 card. Couple other things that were made official since my last video. You got rumors. Sorry, it's not official, but the rumor is Cyborg versus Nunez for International Fight Week, first week of July, and also on that card, they're trying to make TJ Dillashaw versus Mighty Mouse Johnson for the 125 belt. That would be insane. I would love to see that fight happen, or those 2 fights be on that July card. Sucks you got to wait a bunch of months for that, but at the end of the day, it'll be worth the wait. That's it for this one. If you liked the video, subscribe. Check me out on Twitter at MMA Boxing Talk 1. Peace.